You might know that Gordon Brown is not up to much, and I might know that he's not up to much, but there's a few million workers that vote for him at election time. There's a small little detail, you see. And they vote for him not because they particularly like him, most of them don't like it, but because there's no alternative, as simple as that. There is no alternative. In Britain, in the year of our Lord 2010, as far as the overwhelming mass of workers are concerned, there's no alternative to the Labour Party. If they don't vote Labour, they don't vote at all. And there have been numerous attempts by other groups to stand in elections, and they always lose their deposit. They make complete fools of themselves. The workers don't even notice such organisations. No. Our task is to work within the mass organisations of the working class. Okay? Same as the Bolsheviks did, even with Gapon's union. And these mass organisations, by the way, they will change. They don't live in the stratosphere, you know. They're under the pressure of the workers. All right, at the moment, there's no big movements of the workers in Britain. There will be, especially when Labour loses the next election, which I believe they will, because of the policies they simply deserve to lose the way they're carrying on. But what's the alternative? The alternative is the Tories. Anyone knows that. And under these conditions, the Tories are going to stick the boot in. And if anybody thinks that the British workers and the unions are just going to sit back and allow this to happen, they've got another thing coming. All hell will be let loose. First of all, on the industrial front. But yes, but in Britain, the trade unions are linked to the Labour Party. And in opposition, the Labour Party can swing far to the left. I think Brown is finished, obviously. And a lot of the others will go. The Blairites will go. Because their careers are not looking very rosy. And therefore, I believe that there's a good platform for us if we're patient. You don't shout and bawl as the other groups. You argue. What Lenin said in 1917. What was Lenin's slogan in 1917? Patiently explain. Patiently explain to the workers in the unions and establish a dialogue. Of course, we fight the common class, we fight against the Tories and so on and so forth, but at the same time we explain that the working class and the labour movement must stand, shall we say, on genuine socialist policies. If you don't like the word Marxism, we're not going to argue about words and so on. So, the other thing, of course, is that we're internationalists. You know, you can't have socialism in one country, and you can't build a serious Marxist organisation in one country. Marx, Engels, Lenin, Trotsky, Marx would never build a German party. And Lenin never built a Russian party. The very idea would be an anathema from the very beginning. From the days of the First International, Marxism always builds an international organisation. That's why it's good that it comes from different countries. You know, what Marx said, workers of the world unite. We're against all forms of racism and chauvinism and nationalism. We're internationalists. Working class internationally has got one common enemy, which is capitalism and imperialism. And we stand for the sacred unity of the workers, irrespective of race, religion, anything else, gender, anything else. We stand for the unity. And therefore, that's why we have an international organisation, the International Marxist Tendency, which is present in about 30 or 40 countries at the present time. And that's the correct way to proceed. What next? Tanya, where's Tanya? There we are. Very interesting question, that, Tanya. Now, you see, when Trotsky opened up a struggle against Stalin, against Stalinism, he was in a very difficult position. For objective reasons. You know, you read these clever historians, by the way, they're all, it's terrible rubbish. Most of them write rubbish. Who's that clown in Cambridge? Orlando Figs or Fids? How do you pronounce his name? He's not a friend of yours? No, I thought he was. Orlando Figures, is it? He wrote a damn great big book like this. I ploughed through it. You know. It put years on me, honestly. It took years of my life reading that stuff. It's just nonsense. And this idea, some other comrade raised that question. Oh, it's a coup. Well, that's what it is. Not a revolution, it was a coup. Yes. You heard that argument. Oh, yes, it was a coup of a tiny, unrepresentative minority. Lenin and Trotsky, a small group of conspirators, and they staged a coup and they took over the revolution. Now, here's an interesting point. You know, one assumes we are born with this thing on our shoulders, you know, in order to give us the capacity to reflect and think logically. That was always my understanding, anyway. You know? When Trotsky said one time, when all else is lost and you have no alternative, start to think, it's not a bad piece of advice. Think about it. Oh, it's a coup of a small... Now, hang on a sec. Wait a minute, girls and boys. Just a minute. Just hold your horses. You are talking here about a massive country of 150 million people, okay? By what art of black magic does a tiny minority of conspirators suddenly manage to control a country of 150 million people? Strange. What's the mechanism? How is it done? I wish somebody would tell me. I'd have a go myself. You know, it wouldn't be a bad thing. I'd go to a country of 150 million and take over like that. You know, it's just balderdash. We leave the realm of logic altogether. You get into the realm of mysticism and demonology, you know. The only reason why Lenin and Trotsky succeeded in taking power is that they actually succeeded by patiently working in the Soviets. They got the majority. Simple fact. They got through voting, through the democratic procedures and voting and discussion, through the experience of the workers, because workers in general only learn from experience. They got the majority. Is that left or gone?
Gone.
Good.
You've been speaking.
Good. Okay. Right. Okay. That's relatively clear. So they won the majority. In one Soviet, the Soviets, of course, were the elected councils of workers and so on. They hardly overwhelmed. That's why there was no resistance. Even that clown Figures. You may quote me if you ever come across this chap. You get expelled, of course. But even Figures says, he contradicts himself. He says that the Bolshevik coup in Petrograd was really a police operation, like a police operation. In other words, there was no bloodshed. A police operation is a simple matter. Just go to somebody's house and you're under arrest. Come with me. You know, hand on shoulder kind of thing. You know, a police operation. That's correct. It was like a police operation. He contradicts himself. But how is it possible? You know, it was only possible, and if you read John Reed's book, it comes across very, very clearly, and it comes across very clearly also in Trotsky's History of the Russian Revolution. The Bolsheviks won a majority, and that's what enabled them to take power, and nothing else. Oh, just one sort of side before we come back to Tanya. I haven't forgotten about you. But David asked the question, Trotsky on money. Well, Trotsky's idea of money, David, is the same as Marx, you know. That the capitalist society, of course, is based upon production for profit, whereas socialism is based upon production for needs. It was a planned economy, you know. So Trotsky didn't have a different position to Marx in relation to that question. That's a separate discussion again. We'd have to have another session on that. To come back to Tanya, now that's an interesting point. When the revolution ebbed, you see there's a revolution, of course, the masses, it's got a period of ascent. You see this in the French Revolution also. A period of ascent in which the masses are on the advance and are actively participating and so on. Then there can be a period of ebbing, of descent, in which the masses lose interest, they become apathetic, they become tired, exhausted, and so on and so forth. In that stage, then that was the stage Trotsky faced after 1924, after Lenin's death. Now, but I don't feel discriminated, Tanya. I'll come back to you in a minute, because this is related to Mikhail's question. You know, why did Trotsky not use the Red Army to stop Stalin? I think that's what you asked. Yeah? In 1925, he could have done that. Up to 1925, Trotsky was still the head of the Red Army. He had, of course, colossal support in the Red Army. He had colossal support in society, which Stalin did not. Stalin was virtually unknown at that stage. Now, many people have asked that question, you know. Why didn't he do this? And the reason is that Trotsky answers that. The reason is this. You see, it's not as simple as that. All these historians are very, very superficial, because they pose it as a struggle between two men, Lenin and Stalin and Trotsky. And Trotsky, of course, was very brilliant and so on, but Stalin was even more brilliant. Stalin was clever and tactically superior, and therefore he defeated Trotsky. Not so. The real reason was this. Let me make a point to you. Trotsky knew that he would be defeated. He knew perfectly well that he couldn't succeed. What he was trying to do was to put down a marker for the future. The reason that he couldn't succeed, unless there was support from outside, from the world revolution, was the exhaustion of the working class. As I say, the workers would say, well, yes, we agree with your ideas. What you say is true about the bureaucracy and so on, but I'm tired, okay? I've got a family to feed and I'm sorry, you know. That was the position. Therefore, he knew that they couldn't succeed. Now, why didn't he use the Red Army? Well, Trotsky answered that in the following way. He said, yes, I could have done that. I could have taken power in 1920 quite easily. But in that case, the objective conditions would just be the same. All that would happen is that I would be the prisoner of the military bureaucracy then, you know, the army generals. Instead of a civilian bureaucracy under Stalin, they'd have had an army, a military bureaucracy, and one of two things would happen. Either I would do what they say, you'd have the same corruption and dictatorship and so on, or else I'd have been removed. And far from combating the problem, you'd have had a Stalinist dictatorship in 1925 of a military character. And the reason I say that is that what we're discussing is not precisely a struggle between two individuals, but it's a class question. It's a question of the correlation of class forces, which was unfavourable to the working class. Trotsky had quite a small base to proceed from. Now I'll come back yet again to Stalin. Sorry about this. It's just that these questions are related. Now, being in a weak position, Trotsky started the opposition in 1923. That was the first opposition. It was a very small group of mainly of cadres of the party. At that stage, Kamenev and Zinoviev, who were two old Bolshevik leaders, were with Stalin. As a matter of fact, it's not generally realized, the person that started this nonsense about Trotskyism, what Trotskyism doesn't exist. They invented this word, Trotskyism. The person that did that was Zinoviev, actually, for personal reasons. People think that personal factors don't play a role in politics. I'm telling you, they do. Prestige. Zinoviev